We are right now at the NFL Draft Combine in Indianapolis. Free agency is just around the corner. Starts next week. We have 12 teams that have a quarterback issue in the NFL. I wrote a column about it today on my website. If you love NFL football, check my One Man's Opinion column on hacksawhamilton.com. I broke down each club, etc. Let me update you on the storylines in the NFL as of noon today. LA Rams have given Matthew Stafford permission to talk to anybody he wants. Conversations have already begun. He was in Montana last Friday. Matthew Stafford, face-to-face meeting with Tom Brady, who represents the Raiders.
Hey.
So they've had that first meeting, more than get acquainted. Today at the Combine in Indianapolis, Jimmy Sexton, Matthew Stafford's agent, talked to the Giants about the parameters of a contract. The huge question, obviously, for the Rams. Matthew Stafford wants a $50 million deal next season. He's tired of playing at a discount. He's not been paid what other star quarterbacks have been paid. Of the $50 million, he wants $25 million guaranteed this year. He wants a second year of the contract. He wants another $25 guaranteed next season. That's pretty deep for a 37-year-old quarterback. However, this is a guy who has done a tremendous job. Sean McVay said this week at the NFL Combines, making a decision with Matthew Stafford comes in different levels and different layers. Can they afford from a cap standpoint to give him that kind of money? Does it make sense to give him that kind of money at his age? How do you go fill other holes if you're giving him that kind of money, knowing you got other players whose contracts are coming up, you're going to have to give money to? So there's a big issue there. And the unannounced issue is if you let him go, if you trade him, who's going to replace him in Los Angeles? That's another part of the conversation. And the third one is they're asking for a number one draft pick. Who out there on the other street corner is going to trade a number one draft pick for a 37-year-old quarterback? Big issue there. Now, I was told the Raiders might be willing to offer a third-round pick or maybe a 3 and a 5. Well, the third-round pick is at the top of the board for the Raiders, top of that third round. So that's got value. But they're not giving up a number one pick. They're not going to go up the 6th pick in the first round for 37-year-old Matthew Stafford. There are creative ways to do that. So that's the Rams storyline. You got the Raiders situation. Chip Kelly is very much part of this conversation as to what type of quarterback they want to get with the Raider Nation. Stafford's a proven commodity. Now, the Raiders could trade for Stafford if the price is right. They could afford Stafford if the price is right. They'd still have to go get a quarterback for the future. Is this the year they do something in the draft? And who's the quarterback of the future for the Raiders if Stafford is coming in the front door right now? That's going to be a very interesting fit. But the fact that Tom Brady was in Montana at his ranch and invited Stafford in to meet with him face-to-face, that kind of leads me to believe Stafford might have the inside track to go to the Raiders if the Raiders are willing to give up something of significance to pry him out of L.A. Third one is the New York Football Jets. Aaron Rodgers is leaving. Davante Adams wants to leave. Aaron Rodgers has now publicly said he'd like to play for the Rams, and he'd be willing to play at a discount for the Rams. And he wants to bring Davante Adams with him. They'd both come to the Rams at discount prices. Now, Rodgers due to make $40 million. Davante's cap figure is $36. I was told they had to take a 50% pay cut. If they wanted to come and finish their career at $20 million apiece, that might be the answer. Who do the Rams replace Matthew Stafford with if it's Aaron Rodgers? But that doesn't solve anything real long-term for the Rams. What it does is it just buys them a year or two. You know, and in terms of the Jets, who the hell knows where they go to get a quarterback once Aaron Rodgers leaves. So that's the latest with the Jets. The Giants situation, they never replaced Daniel Jones. That might be the darkest hole in the league, probably darker than the mess in Cleveland. But the fact that Jimmy Sexton was meeting with the Giants today, well, the Giants going to trade a high pick to rent Matthew Stafford for 2 to 3 years. Stay tuned for that. The fourth one is Minnesota. They don't have a quarterback crisis. Got a lot of quarterbacks there, but they're not sure who to keep. They've elected not to franchise tag Sam Darnold. The price would be $40 million. Sam Darnold earned 10 last year on a one-year make-good contract. I was told he wants $35 million at least if he signs an extension in Minnesota. Vikings might do that, but then maybe the Vikings don't do that. Vikings also have a chance to re-sign Daniel Jones, the ex-Giant quarterback. There will be no J.J. McCarthy sighting for next season in the beginning of the season because he's still in massive rehab from the meniscus surgery. So Minnesota, they're kind of caught between the rock and the hard place. Do you keep Darnold and at what price? If you let him walk, who's going to replace him? Is it Daniel Jones on another one-year rental? Because he's got to rebuild his resume, the ex-New York Giants. The Minnesota thing is interesting. Cleveland, I was told, they are in such salary cap hell, it's unbelievable. The Browns are going to talk about having Deshaun Watson give money back. This will be a third year in a row in which they've gotten virtually nothing from the high-priced quarterback who had the $230 million deal. They want money back. They don't want Jameis Winston back. Who the hell's going to be their quarterback in Cleveland? And if that's not enough, they got the whole Myles Garrett mess. They say they're not trading Myles Garrett. They asked Myles Garrett to restructure his contract to give him cap relief. He said, hell no, he wants out of there. It's a Cleveland toxic waste dump right now. Pittsburgh, it looks like Justin Fields is going to be the guy. Now, he's an uncut gem for a kid that's been in the league and has played chunks of time where he's played well, other chunks of time where he hasn't played well. But it looks like Pittsburgh is going to re-sign him, which means Russell Wilson will be calling the post office and having his mail sent somewhere else. But we're talking about an aged Russell Wilson. And then you got the Colts. They're not willing to admit they made a mistake on Anthony Richardson from the University of Florida. But he's had two really poor years. Injuries, surgeries, 47% completion rate, ton of interceptions, sacks, fumbles. He's just had two very, very erratic seasons. The Colts are going to try to get a quarterback to come in to compete with Anthony Richardson for the starting job. At this point in time, I'm not really sure who the starting quarterback is going to be. They're not bringing Joe Flacco back at age 40 plus. So there's an awful lot of uncertainty around the National Football League, John. As I said, there's a total of 12 teams that have a quarterback issue one way or another. It'd be fascinating to see, because free agency starts next week, how these dominoes start to fall. And they have till tomorrow to franchise tag anybody. And Darnold obviously was the marquee name that was out there that could have been franchise tagged as of this hour. That's not happening in Minnesota. So, John, go ahead, solve the problems.
You know, it's still amazing to me that the Rams want to get rid of Matt Stafford. And so I keep thinking about his career, and he's 37, and dude is good right now. Yep. Most quarterbacks are on the downside. They're like ramping down the curve, right, when they're in their late 30s, unless you're Tom Brady or some exception. So how much gas is left in the tank with Stafford? And do you see his trajectory as, steady Eddie, even for like another 3 or 4 more years?
I'd say at least the next 2 if there's no injuries. And there were no injuries last year. He threw for 3,200 yards and I want to say 20 touchdowns on a team that was really balanced run versus throw.
Mm-hmm.
But he's given him deals and help with his contract, and that's the big issue. He wants to be paid now. He's asking for $50 million, and that does not put him at the top. Dak Prescott is number one and with over $60 million. I think it ranks him 10th overall. But at $50 million, with 25 guaranteed this year and 25 guaranteed on the second year, that's a big chunk of change for the Rams for an older quarterback. But who are they going to get? And is Aaron Rodgers better than Matthew Stafford in LA? You tell me.
Jimmy G, he's still hanging around with the Rams. No, but I can see a shuffling here, a kind of a rotation of the deck.
One domino falls, I think another one will fall.
Yes.
And that's where it's going to go.
Exactly. So I think the key is that if you have your heart set, like Les Snead wants a mobile quarterback, maybe he's thinking, okay, I'm gonna draft that guy. Maybe not this year, maybe next year or the year after that. And so then you get one of these veterans and plug him in for a few years, right?
That's the idea, but who's the guy? And is it going to be a kid? Is it going to be somebody else from another team? Is it a draft pick? I mean, there's only 2 quarterbacks on the board at the top of the draft board who are instant starters. I don't think Rams have access to either one of those guys, Cam Ward or Shadur Sanders.
That's not happening. But, again, it's just amazing that Stafford could be on the move. Do you think if Aaron Rodgers landed in LA, we see a lot more drama and everything that goes along with him?
No, because Sean McVay runs the team.
Okay.
But Stafford would go somewhere else. I think the decision on Stafford is the first domino that falls, and then you make the decision on Rodgers. But what are you getting from Rodgers? Although, as crappy as he was 5-12 in 2 years with the Jets because he had the Achilles injury the first season, hardly played. But he was really competitive. I mean, he threw for, I want to say, 3,700 yards.
Yeah.
And he threw 27 touchdown passes on a really bad team that was falling apart around him. And he had some injuries along the way. Interesting to see where all this goes. Okay, that's all things quarterbacks in the NFL. I did my homework this week for this podcast. We did a lot of research and a lot of unique storylines. So, Fans Forum chat box is open. I'm looking for NFL fans with opinions on any of the teams that we've just mentioned. Just fire us a question, make a comment in the chat box. Fans Forum. We're not done with the NFL. Next topic.
Yeah, more of your